You're listening to Radio Fallout, and this is your host Erik Lindenius talking to you out there on the tubes. Why don't you lean back, relax, and let me tell you about an experience I had many years ago. So, I played this first-person game. It may have been Call of Duty or Medal of Honor. It was one of the earlier games. One where you were soldiering your way through the Second World War. So, there I am, distributing lead to my enemies, running from cover to cover. I'm surrounded by the opposite team. It feels intense, it feels dangerous. I'm hooked. Until a certain moment, which I will talk to you about after these messages. We'll be right back. And we're back. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So, there I was, in my Second World War game, deep into the mud, surrounded by enemies that never stopped coming at me, from behind stone walls or stone houses or large stones. There were all sorts of stones and covers, until I advanced forward and suddenly noticed that they stopped spawning from behind the covers. And I found that odd. Most probably a coincidence. But now I was intrigued. And I became more observant of the enemy behavior. And what do you know? I soon realized the truth of my experience. I wasn't a soldier in a war, advancing forward by meticulously getting rid of my enemies so I could finish my objectives. I'm no soldier, I'm a gamer. There is not a platoon of enemies. There are triggering areas that are controlling where my enemies will spawn. And as long as I'm camping within these triggering areas, my enemies keep on spawning. I soon came to learn that when I moved forward in a fast pace, there would be less adversaries for me to meet. And so, the immersion fell. The fourth wall was broken. And when I'm back, I'm gonna talk to you more about the wall. The fourth one. Yeah. You're listening to Radio Fallout and your host Erik Lindenius. Most of you know the concept of the fourth wall. But in case you don't, let's talk about it for a while. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the definition of the fourth wall is the proscenium opening through which the audience sees the performance. Which in simpler terms basically means the medium through which you are consuming a story. The TV you're watching Game of Thrones on. In most cases, the persons in the stores that we see and hear aren't aware that they are fictive people in a fictive story. Joel and Ellie are not aware that they are characters in a television series, and they are neither aware of them being observed and controlled by gamers behind the fourth wall in the Naughty Dog game The Last of Us. But sometimes the characters are aware that they are fictive characters and they are being observed by us as an audience. That is breaking the fourth wall. Breaking of the fourth wall could be figuratively. For example, letting a game character knock on your screen. Another famous example is the movie Gremlins 2, when the gremlins are disrupting the movie that they are playing before you. Rick and Morty, or Deadpool, are modern examples of characters going full-blown fourth wall breaking. And I can also break the fourth wall in this video, when I'm telling you that this is not a radio show within the Cyberpunk universe, but rather me, a Swedish person talking to you, who are a watcher on YouTube. In each of these examples, the actors, the game designer, scriptwriters and the directors is fully aware of the narration breaking the wall. But there is, what I presume is not purposefully, breaking of the fourth wall in games. And I believe that it will have the opposite reaction to the game than what the producers probably was aiming for. Let's talk more about that after these messages. What's the problem with breaking the fourth wall? Well, the goal of a lot of fiction is immersion. We want the audience to be captured by the moment, to feel what the characters are feeling, to feel scared or happy or curious. There is an agreement between the storyteller and the audience that we want to feel these emotions. When we break the fourth wall, the illusion that the characters are real disappears, and we, as the audience, becomes aware that we are watching a show and there are no real dangers or feelings involved. Sometimes, fiction breaks the fourth wall without meaning to. For example, when we watch a horror movie and the monster is really poorly made CGI or puppets, our brain goes, "Oh, this effect is so bad that it is not a thing that exists within this fictional world I'm watching." And suddenly, the horror movie is not scary anymore, because we can no longer convince our brain to pretend that what we are watching is not real. I believe this also is true for modern gaming. We can fool our brain that we are the game protagonists. We can feel for a character and what they have set out to do. But bad game design can also make the player start to act in a gamey way rather than experiencing the game as intended. Let us go back to my first example of the Call of Honor or Medal of Duty game, whatever it's called. The same second that I discovered the mechanics of the game, it stopped being immersive. It was no longer exciting or enthralling or scary. It rather became a "am I standing in the right triggering area" kind of game. I did no longer see enemy soldiers, but rather some irritating spawning algorithms that made me waste my LED variables. Let's talk about two more modern games that are breaking the fourth wall, but without meaning to do so: Fallout 4 and Cyberpunk 2077. These games are using other forms of triggering areas that make me as a player acutely aware of that they are games and not a story that unfolds and want me to know more. I love both Fallout 4 and Cyberpunk, but both of these games are guilty of using the same storytelling device that have a somewhat opposite effect of what I believe the intention was. What I'm talking about is to make your main story a race against time. And speaking of time, it's time for these messages from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Hello there. And if you are just dialing in, this is Radio Fallout. A race against time works pretty well within confined stories, such as movies or limited television series, or games that are obstacle courses. It creates tension and a sense of urgency. We want the protagonist, the hero, to succeed. As the gaming industry progresses into advanced graphics and cinematic storytelling, they are trying to use the same method for making us players react and act in a certain way. They want us to feel for and help the protagonist. However, you cannot combine a sense of urgency with an open world. You cannot eat the cake and have it too, not without immediately breaking the fourth wall. To in a blink of an eye be more aware that you are playing a game. Because the same instant you as a player understand that the progression of the urgency is triggered by you doing certain quests, you will also be acutely aware of that it is a game you're playing, and you can manipulate the triggering of events however you want. You are no longer the lone wanderer in Fallout or the Edge Runner V in Cyberpunk. You are a gamer, deliberately deciding if you are making the progression in the main story. And this wouldn't be so much of a problem if the main story wasn't so desperately trying to convince you that you really are in a hurry. Because either your kidnapped son will disappear for good, or you will transform into Keanu Reeves. In the movie Taken, Liam Neeson directly takes out his set of special skills and are applying them on his daughter's kidnappers during the whole runtime of the movie. We don't see him sightseeing in Paris, taking odd jobs as a cab driver for people with exploding private parts. Nor are we seeing him buying lands in Missouri to build a large cottage to his extended family of 20 relatives. Everything Liam Neeson does in the movie Taken is to further his progress in his hunt for the kidnappers. My suspicion is that the producers of Fallout 4 and Cyberpunk 2077 decided to use this sense of urgency in the main stories to try to motivate the player to progress forward. And maybe it works the first time if you play in the game. Maybe. But as soon as you replay the game, the storytelling technique of urgency gets annoying. The open world of Fallout 4 lets you build settlements for hundreds of hours. You can be an explorer, a Minuteman, a mass deraider fire. But you can never do that without first having your spouse getting unspoused and your son getting dethroned. And logically, to do anything but go completely Liam Neeson and frantically chasing after your son or go mad with grief will directly break the fourth wall. I have friends that have stopped playing Fallout 4 after they find Sean. Since the first hour of the game really tells you that the mission of the Lone Wanderer is about Sean. The story, and therefore the game, ends when you find your son, however you interpret who or what your son is. Just as the Boston Commonwealth, Night City is a fantastic place to get immersed in. It promises me a lot of possibilities, but it is frustrating that I have to put an USB Keanu Reeves in my head and meet with Dexter Backstabber Deshawn to let me be able to access the whole city. And once the whole playable area opens up for me as a player, the game narrative makes it very clear that I should only concern about my imminent Keanu situation. In other words, I have to be dying to be able to experience the full story. But to explore the game fully, I have to do anything but what the game tells me to do.
P, my reconnaissance is complete.
It worked. Can hear it in your voice.
Everything is ready. I am sending you coordinates. Join me as quickly as you can.
When Takemura, for example, asks me to meet him for an important information regarding my impending doom, I can avoid the impending doom by not meet with Takemura. I hope you see what I'm aiming at here. I hope you can see what I mean by the main stories breaking the fourth wall in Fallout 4 or Cyberpunk 2077. As a result of trying to make me as a player immersed in a game by adding a ticking clock or sense of urgency, this game paradoxically gets painfully obvious that they are games. That I am in a game. You are listening to Radio Fallout. My name is Erik Lendenius, and just like V, my time is up. In a future program, I hope I can talk to you about how to fix the main story of Cyberpunk 2077 to make it more replayable and without breaking the fourth wall. Next up on Radio Fallout, Keanu Reeves.